Let's talk a little Tar Heel football. Spring game again on April 20th. Televised practice on the 13th. Adam, I feel like this has been a quiet spring for the Tar Heels. Mack Brown had a media availability on Tuesday of this week where he spoke for like 45 minutes after practice on a variety of subjects, and I'm not sure any of them are huge surprises. I think you've got a quarterback battle between Max Johnson and Connor Harrell. I'm going to guess that's going to go all the way until a week or two before Carolina opens the season at Minnesota. You have an offensive line that's going to have a lot of new players. 4 starters need to be replaced. Carolina has to be better than it has been on that offensive line. You have a mix in the defensive front of some guys who have been around a while, like a Des Evans and a Kamen Rucker and a Jahvaree Ritzie, and some guys who it's time for them to step up, like a Travis Shaw or a Bo Atkinson, to see what they can do. A bunch of new names in the secondary and new players in the secondary. Yet I think you know what you have in Power Echols. You have an idea of what you have in Amari Campbell. At linebacker, you need to find some depth there. You have this whole new piece with Jeff Collins at the defensive coordinator spot. And I think you've got a lot of talent at the receiver, tight end, and running back position. So none of those, to me, are big surprises. It's going to come down, in my opinion, to 3 things. 1, who is the quarterback? How good is that player, and how does Carolina tailor what it's trying to do offensively around that player's skill set? Keeping in mind that you also have one of the best running backs in the country in Omari Hampton there in the backfield. That's point 1. Can Carolina take a step forward on the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball, where I think Carolina has been somewhere between okay and not good enough in the last couple of seasons on both sides.
Sometimes in the same game.
Yeah. And then finally, are you going to be as in total better defensively than you have been, even to the point, can you just be better organized, better flying around better? When you make mistakes, they aren't mistakes of you just not of being out of place and looking at each other at the snap. Can all of that get cleaned up, which I feel like will occur just in talking to Jeff Collins, as we did a couple months ago, 2 months ago maybe, where it seemed very clear that he was aware of the challenges that needed to be addressed for the Tar Heels. So, again, quarterback, lines of scrimmage, and general improvement defensively comes down to those 3 things for the Heels.
Yeah, I mean, we all understand that the defense is the biggest issue. Like, it has to be better because you've got enough elsewhere. Maybe we'll be sitting here in November and I'll feel dumb. I just feel like Jeff Collins understands what needs to be fixed, and many of the things he brings to the table do address those things. I think he is one of the better defensive coordinators in the country. I understand that he was not successful as a head coach, but that's not what he was hired to do. He was hired to make the defense better, and it seems to me he understands how to do that. Now, does he have the personnel to do so? I think so. It's probably not going to be the 97 defense,
right, but
I think they can be better. The quarterbacks thing, I'm starting to get the feel they're both going to play.
Well, I haven't seen enough of Max Johnson to have an informed opinion. I know that he checks a lot of boxes on paper. He's tall, he's strong, he has a big arm, he can run.
I thought it was interesting that Mack Brown pointed out that he could run.
Yes.
Because I think the picture has been you can either have mobile Connor Harrell or you can have tall throwing guy Max Johnson.
Right.
And Mack Brown was very careful to point out he can run more than you think, which I think means something.
And I think, I mean, you have to break Connor Harrell's one appearance that we've all seen him into 2 different pieces of before he injured his ankle and after he injured his ankle in that game against West Virginia. I thought before he injured his ankle, he looked like a guy that had a lot of potential. Like, oh, this dude, he's tough, kind of had just like a little bit of like moxie to him.
Got a little Darian Durant.
Yeah, and could clearly, his mobility was not just a guy who could run, it was a like plus mobility with what he was able to do with his legs. When he then was forced to become a guy who couldn't really move and had to stand there in the pocket, he wasn't ready for that. And so, but I do think the upside on Connor Harrell is intriguing, if nothing else. I also think Carolina is good enough at the skill positions where you still have a ton of players like Hampton and J.J. Jones and Chris Culliver and Bryson Nesbitt and John Copenhaver and Nate McCollum and there's just some freshmen who have come in. I mean, there are enough pieces there that you have an opportunity to be. Now, I'm not saying you're going to be as good as the Tar Heels have been when you had Sam Howell and Drake May, but you can still have a very successful and efficient offense to win a lot of games with whoever's back there. So I can't imagine that's a decision, to your point, that's going to be made anytime soon. And there's no ulterior motive there. It's just because I think both these guys deserve a chance and bring enough to the table that they're going to keep themselves in the conversation well into fall camp.
In some ways, you wish that one of them was bad. But it's not a decision between, like, do you want the good quarterback or the bad quarterback? They both do things that can help you win. It's who can help you do more. I think people forget how good Hampton was last year. Mm-hmm. He ran for over 1,500 yards.
Doak Walker finalist. Like, I mean, he was really, really good.
Yeah. If you can perfect the art of turning around and handing it to him, you've got a very good chance to be the quarterback because he's Carolina's best offensive player.
Yes.
And they're going to have to ride that, which goes back to the offensive line. The other things I thought Mack Brown said that were interesting that related to that were the size of the tackles, because I do think there's been sometimes where you see Carolina line up against an opponent and you think the Tar Heels look kind of small. And it seems like that has been corrected. Now, the question is, can you push anyone out of the way, which goes back to what Mack Brown said. I thought it was interesting that they had a full game this past weekend and tackled all the way to the ground. I like that.
There are a couple things that he harped on that have been issues for Carolina. One, and he has been very public, as Mack Brown normally is, where I think he has struggled of how to manage how much you hit and tackle in today's football. And that is not unique to Carolina. You got to keep everybody healthy, but you also have to be ready for the physicality of an actual game. And so how do you do that with how you practice? And it seems like Carolina's decided to be pretty physical. Now, having said that, like Carolina tackled a whole bunch leading up to that South Carolina game in the bowl game a couple years ago, and it didn't show on the field. And the special teams aspect, he mentioned the two words special teams came up about 1 million times as Mack Brown spoke. It's clear he doesn't feel like Carolina's been good enough in those areas where I think Carolina has kind of been fine, right? I mean, I haven't left many games thinking that the Tar Heels special teams lost them the game in some way, although the Virginia game this past year, certainly that was a factor. But also you haven't left a game thinking, woo, Tar Heels won the game because of that special teams, outside of maybe Huzzy returning that punt for a touchdown against Pitt. That was a big play and had another long touchdown or a long return in that game. And Carolina's been solid at the kicker position, solid to very good at the kicker position. But so it seems like that is an area, those two things, the physicality and just overall special teams that Mack Brown has identified as things that he wants to be better.
And it's like you said, it's not like he's uncovered some big secret.
Right.
I think everyone knows this already, and I think you could reasonably expect him to talk about these things in the spring because he knows they are issues. As we have said all along, I think many Tar Heel fans are going to reserve judgment until we get into August and September.
Yes.
And then see if the product on the field supports this theory.
So again, televised practice coming up tomorrow, April 13th, and then spring game, come join us in Kenan Stadium. Again, it's presented by Wegmans. That game is at 3 o'clock in Kenan Stadium. Admission is free. Fan Fest around the bell tower starting at 1 p.m.